Consider this fact. WPFW receives 80% of its funding from you, our listeners. We receive a small government subsidy. We receive a small amount of foundation funding. We do not accept nor pursue program underwriting. We do not have the benefit of a college and/or university and/or state government or local municipal authority to augment our revenue and/or provide in-kind services such as reduced rent, utilities, and staff salary subsidies. The fact is, our parent organization, the Pacifica Foundation, is having to find a way or make a way out of its own challenges. Increasingly, all of the Pacifica stations' ability to sustain themselves depend upon our individual and collective ability to generate community financial support. And yes, we must create alternative funding mechanisms, including foundation grant funding. Just for your consideration, WPFW is a member of the Development Exchange Incorporated, and as such, we access their grant center database and monitor this database regularly to identify funding prospects and work to build our grant-making capacity. We are engaged and committed to the pursuit of major donor funding, and in my capacity as general manager, I've committed to the pursuit of major donors. Every week, I incorporate in my work effort to listen and engage current and prospective major donors. And while it's one of the most cost-effective methods for fundraising, the reality is that it takes time for solicitation, cultivation, and most especially reward to set in. Fortunately, WPFW is fortified with a major donor circle chairperson, whose name you all know, and that's Andy Shalom. Andy generously gives not only his time and advice to our major donor efforts, most importantly, he gives his treasure. And correspondingly, as many of you know, because many of you are among the willing, WPFW has placed a particular emphasis on appealing to supporters and listeners to become sustaining members of WPFW. There is enormous potential in major donor and sustaining membership, and I expect WPFW will eventually become a top performer in both of these enterprises. This forecast, however, does not provide an immediate remedy to the crisis created by the decline in current listenership and correspondingly the decline in listener support. The WPFW schedule grid that had been in place for a number of years carried the station for a long period of time. But somewhere along that path, when we should have revised the format, we didn't. We played it safe. And/or we stuck with the traditional community radio thinking. You might please an array of underserved interests, and/or we talked amongst ourselves and with our friends and family, and we thought we were doing a great job, but we were not looking at the numbers, audience, and audience support. Now our audience has dwindled, and correspondingly our membership rolls are not enough to maintain the necessary subsidies to support the operation of the station. There is a very serious and widespread economic pressure on stations like ours. Volunteer-based models for operating community radio stations. As the range of media options increase, the pressure of diverse format, patch quilt formatted stations, that pressure is even greater for a community station such as WPFW than it is on the other parts of public radio, not the least of which is our companion non-commercial counterpart, WAMU. Ladies and gentlemen, the fact is too many potential public community radio listeners that should be low-hanging fruit for WPFW's listenership and membership do not come to us and/or do not stay with us. They basically get the message WPFW might not be for them. The WPFW format that we had up today still is struggling to break through the barriers for attracting and sustaining new audiences. Community radio, i.e. WPFW, was and is adapting too slowly to the competitive challenges from the internet-based media platforms. I understand and respect and honor our progressive community and our progressive ethos. And because I understand the implicit threat that has been interpreted and voiced by many who listen to this station, it, however, does not dismiss the fact that we have a whole bundle of individual shows that don't flow well. There's been no continuity across the weekday schedule and even through the days themselves. You have to program radio like people listen to radio. People need a certain amount of continuity and familiarity. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, an element of self-delusion sometimes protects the status quo. A lot of us presume to know our audience, its likes, its dislikes, its enthusiasms, and why? Because we talk amongst ourselves. We talk amongst our family, we talk amongst our friends, and we think that we're doing a great job. I thought as a manager, as a local station board member, interacting with the Community Advisory Board, as a volunteer, and even as a listener, we were great, but we weren't looking at the numbers. More stations are starting to accept the fact that there are ways to stay true to your values and mission, and be smarter about what we put on the air. Community radio stations are responding to audience losses. Others have come to accept that there are ways to use audience research that is more in keeping with community radio. It's now time to stretch the boundaries and to look at other ways to do what we do. There's no question, jazz and justice is community service, no question. But isn't it better to do jazz and justice for as many people as you can by raising the bar in programming to attract more people? You can do more of what you want and what you need to do.
No, it's not.
No.
At the outset of my assuming the general manager's position at WPFW, I engaged in an ongoing listen and learn DMV-wide tour, listening and learning from our communities, and most especially listening and learning what the needs, interests, and concerns of our community are. In addition to my ongoing community ascertainment, which by the way includes both our core and fringe listeners, I've studied the audience data, received consultation from our audience data service, received consultation from organizations whose mission is to serve these vital resources, our community radio stations, organizations such as the National Federation of Community Broadcasters, the African Americans Consortium of Public Radio, other community broadcasters. I've consulted with a select number of station managers, program executives from African American stations, and general mainline stations who could be evaluated for being successful models of change. And whether you like these stations or not, you see proof of concept at work. Sometimes it's hard to argue with the scoreboard.